If GED math is holding you back from moving ahead, then you're in the right place. Because I made this video and loaded this up with plenty of tips, tricks, and strategies, and practice questions similar to what you can expect on the real test to help you move ahead faster to bigger and better things like college, or a better job, or joining the military, whatever your goal happens to be. And all you have to do is stick around because we're starting right now. Mark buys a jug that holds 128 ounces of milk. Mark is planning to make 3 different recipes. The first recipe calls for 12.2 ounces of milk. The second recipe calls for 3.5 ounces of milk. The third recipe calls for 7.25 ounces of milk. After Mark has made all 3 recipes, how many ounces of milk will be left in the jug? Is it A, B, C, or D? So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and if you get stuck, as always, don't worry about it. We don't care if you get it right or wrong, it's all about the learning for right now. So I'll give you a chance to try this. Okay, so basically there are 2 different ways I think to look at this. I think one of the most straightforward ways is to just start with 128 and then do 128 minus 12.2, and then you're also going to subtract 3.5, and then you're also going to subtract 7.25. And if you just set it up this way and just put this all in your calculator, you will get B as the right answer. Another way to do this would be to first add up 12.2, 3.5, and 7.25, which would give you 22.95. So you could also look at it like 128 minus 22.95. Okay, and you would put this in your calculator and you get the same answer. Okay, so B is the correct answer here. Tyler uses 2/9 of a pound of clay to make a plate. How many plates could Tyler make from 5 pounds of clay? Is the answer A, 22, B, 23, C, 12, or is it D, 19? So now is your chance to pause the video, take all the time you need to figure this out, and if you get stuck, don't worry, because we're just going to go over the answer. Okay, so let me explain this here. The first step would be to take 5, and you're just going to divide 2 over 9. So in your calculator, you can just simply do 5 divided by 2 over 9, and you're going to get 22.5. Okay, so we know that Tyler could make 22.5 plates. But in this case here, it's asking how many plates could he make. So he's going to have 22, and he's going to have half a plate. But we're going to have to say 22 here because he's going to make 22 full plates. So if you picked B, probably what you did was you correctly got this 22.5 and then you rounded it up. But just remember here in this case here, okay, that 0.5, that's not going to be enough to make a full plate. So considering it's just asking how many plates, we would have to just say 22. So there's a little bit of a trick to this question here, so hopefully this makes sense. Scientists estimate that the moon is 4.53 billion years old. What is the number written in scientific notation? Is it A, B, C, or D? So take this number right here, and I'd like you to pick which answer choice shows it in correct scientific notation. So now's your chance to pause the video, try this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so let's take a closer look at this number here. So basically, with scientific notation, we want to write this number so that we put the decimal after the first digit. Okay, so we want our decimal to go right here. And where's our decimal now? Well, right now the decimal is at the end of the number. So we want to take this decimal and we want to count how many places we have to move it to get the decimal after the first number. So we would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So in proper scientific notation, the answer would be 4.53 times 10 to the 9th. Jen, Bill, and Lily work as CNAs at a nursing home. Jen has worked 4 years longer than Bill. Bill has worked half as long as Lily. If Lily worked at the nursing home for 6 years, how long has Jen worked there? Is it A, B, C, or D? So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so the easiest way I think to solve this question is to just turn each of these statements here into equations. And if you're not sure how to do that, don't worry, because that's what I'm going to show you. So the first statement here, Jen has worked 4 years longer than Bill. So I'm going to put a J for Jen. So gen equals 4 plus b is what I'm going to write. Okay, because it tells us that Jen has worked 4 years longer than Bill. Now let's go down to this. It says Bill has worked half as long as Lily. So how can I write that as an equation? Well, I'm going to start with b. So b, or the number of years Bill has worked, is half as many as Lily. So I'm going to put b equals half L. So now we know it says if Lily worked at the nursing home for 6 years. Okay, so Lily worked at the nursing home for 6 years. So let's say L equals 6. And what I really want to find is how long has Jen worked there? So now this just becomes a matter of solving the puzzle here. All right, so what we really want to find is this J. We want to get a number for J. All right, and in order to do that, we first have to find out what B is. And how are we going to find out what B is? Well, we know that L is equal to 6. So what I'm going to do, since we know that L equals 6, is I'm going to rewrite b equals half L, and I'm going to write that as b equals half times 6. All right, so all I'm doing is I'm taking this L and b equals half L, and I'm just replacing the L with a 6 because we know that Lily worked there for 6 years. All right, and now let's solve this. So if b equals half times 6, we know that half times 6 is 3. So we know that Bill has worked there for 3 years. So now what I'm going to do is take this information and I'm going to plug this 3 into this equation for B. All right, and if you're having trouble following this, just know that this probably seems a little more complicated than it really is. Okay, it probably seems like I'm doing a lot of steps here, and I guess I kind of am. But really, I think maybe if you're having trouble watching this, maybe rewatch my solution here. Just make sure you follow how I did this, and hopefully it won't take that long to solve a question like this on the test. The answer here, though, is D, and if you have another way that you'd like to solve questions like this and you still got the same answer, let me know how you did it down below. 20% of the workers at a company earn minimum wage. If 42 workers earn minimum wage, how many total workers work at the company? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So now's your chance to pause the video. As always, take all the time you need, and don't worry if you get stuck because we're just going to go over it. So I'll let you pause the video and try it now. Okay, so in my opinion, the easiest way to solve a question like this is just using the percent formula here. The part over whole equals percent over 100. And this isn't the only way to do this, of course, but I think that for most people, this is the simplest way to get the right answer. So let's just plug the information that we know here into our percent formula. So 42 workers earn minimum wage. So that is our part. Okay, and what we're trying to figure out is the whole, because we want to know how many total workers work at the company. So I'm going to put 42 workers in for the part, and the whole, we're not sure what that is. So I'm just going to call that X for right now. Okay, so 42 over X is equal to my percent over 100. So what do I plug in for my percent? Well, obviously it says right here 20%. So I'm going to put 20% in here. Okay, so now basically I'm just going to use some algebra, and once I get X by itself on one side of my equation here, that's simply going to tell me what the total number of workers at the company is. So one good move would be to first do 20 divided by 100 in your calculator, and if you do that, let me rewrite here, we'll end up with 42 over X equals 0.2. All right, so now my next move is I never like in math, I never really like having a variable in the denominator of my fraction. Now, the denominator is just the bottom number in a fraction. But anyway, I don't really ever like that. It just makes it harder to solve for X. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to multiply by X on both sides of the equation. And the reason I'm going to do that is because if I take this left-hand side, if I multiply it by X, my X's are going to cancel out here. And I'm just going to be left with 42 is equal to 0.2x. Okay. So now what I want to do is I have 0.2x and I just want to get this x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by 0.2 And that's going to leave me with x on the right-hand side. But whatever I do to one side, I also have to do it to the other side as well. Okay, so basically, on the left-hand side, I just have this 42. So I want to divide by 0.2 over here. So 42 divided by 0.2 equals 210. So my answer is 210. Now, sometimes people like to argue with me about this formula for some reason, and they will comment and say that this formula makes it more complicated. And, I'll tell you what, if you can just look at a question like this and read it, and you can just tell that you have to do 42 divided by 0.2 and plug that in your calculator and get the answer, then that's great. You're allowed to disagree with me. I just think that for most people, the simplest way is to just memorize this formula, part over whole equals percent over 100. And whenever you see the word percent on the test, just whip this formula out and just plug in the numbers, do the math in your calculator. And I think for most people, in my opinion, that's probably the easiest way to get percent questions right. But, you're free to disagree. Evan has beaten every 3D game in the Legend of Zelda franchise released to date, with the exception of the Wind Waker, which he gave up on during the Triforce quest. The table below lists the amount of time it took for Evan to beat each game. Question: what is the mean number of hours it took Evan to beat each game? And the instruction says, please put your answer rounded to the nearest hundredth in the box below. Now, obviously, you can't physically write your answer in the box through the screen, but maybe just write it down on a sheet of paper. And whenever you're ready, I'll let you pause the video and give this question a shot. And then whenever you're done, just unpause the video as always, and we'll go over the answer. Mean, median, mode, and range questions are super important to understand for your test because they can show up on science, social studies, and math, which is obviously what you're here to learn. And mean just means the average. So finding the average and finding the mean are just two different ways of saying the same thing. But the first step to finding the mean or the average is to just take every single number and we're going to add up all the numbers in the data set. So I'm going to do 35 plus 22 plus 37.5 and so on and so forth. Okay, and so I add up all these numbers here and I get 237.5 in my calculator. So then the next step is I'm going to take that 237.5 and I'm going to count up the total number of numbers. And that's what I'm going to divide by. So let's do that. So we have how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers in our data set. So I divide this by 6. And again, I'm going to lean heavily on my calculator to do the work for me. And I get 39.58. Okay, so this is the answer that you should have, 39.58. This is what will go down here in the box. Tommy is a cat. Tommy spends approximately 55% of his days sleeping, 30% bathing, 8% eating and drinking, and 7% looking out the window. And all this information right here is the same information that's in this chart here. So if you're on a cell phone or another device with a small screen and you're having trouble seeing this chart, don't worry because the information in this chart is exactly the same as what's written down right here. So you don't technically even need to use this to get the answer. Okay, so the question says the number of hours Tommy spends sleeping per day is about how many times the number of hours he spends looking out the window and eating/drinking per day. Is it A, B, C, or D? So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and take all the time you need. And we only care right now about the process of you learning and improving. We don't care if you get the question right or wrong. So no stress. I just would like you to try the question if you want to. And whenever you're ready, unpause the video and we'll go over the answer. Okay, so basically what you want to do here is start by adding up 8 and 7, right? Because we want to add up the percent that he spends eating and drinking and also the percent that he spends looking out the window. So 8 plus 7 is 15. So now what I think the best way to do this is to go back to the amount of time that he spends sleeping per day, or the percent, which is 55%. And we're just going to divide. So 55 divided by 15. If you plug this in your calculator, you're going to get 3 and then a bunch of repeating 6s, which would round up to 3.67. And we're only looking for about how many times, right? So we don't have to get an exact number. We just need to know about. So 3.67, the closest answer choice here is 4. So B is the correct answer here. If the area of a rectangle is 120 square feet and the width is 20 feet, what is the length in feet of the rectangle? Is it A, B, C, or D? And to save you some time, I put the formula for the area of a rectangle right here. On your test, you would just have to check your formula sheet to get this formula, but I just put it here to save you some time. So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So one quick tip for any question that involves a formula, especially for rectangles, make sure that if the question is asking about the area of the rectangle, make sure that you pick the formula for the area and not the perimeter, because on the formula sheet, you're also going to have the formula for the perimeter of the rectangle. So I know it sounds like common sense right now when we're sitting here, and I just want to mention it because when that time's ticking down on the test, all right, sometimes it's easy to make silly mistakes like that. So that's why I mention it. So basically what we're going to do here is we're going to use the formula, and in place of the A in the formula, I'm just going to take this area of the rectangle and put it in for A. So that's all I have right here. I have 120 equals length times our width. And we know that our width is 20 feet, so that's why I plugged 20 in here for W. So I just rewrote this like a big L just to make it easier to tell that this is an L and not a 1 or something like that. So now all we're going to do is some basic algebra. All right, so we have L times 20, and I want to figure out what L is. I want to get the L by itself on one side of the equation. So since it's L times 20, I want to do the opposite operation of times, which of course is division. So if I divide by 20 here, watch what happens. The 20s are going to cancel out. But there's a rule in math that whatever I do to one side, I also have to do it to the other side as well. So in the calculator, you would just do 120 divided by 20, which gives me 6. And we find that 6 equals L. So 6 is the right answer here. A 100-foot high building creates a shadow along the ground that is 18 feet long. What is the distance from the top of the building to the end of the shadow measured in feet? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So as always, you can pause the video, take all the time you need with this question, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so this question might seem pretty hard at first until we make a picture here to help us understand what's going on. So let's say that this here is, number one, this is a terrible drawing, like my drawings always are in the videos, but let's say that this is our building. Particularly, let's focus on this wall of the building right here. You know what? Instead of drawing a whole building, let's just say that this is the wall of our building, and this is 100 feet high. Okay, and we know that this building is going to create a shadow along the ground that's 18 feet long. Okay, so let's say that this is kind of like our shadow, or the length of the shadow along the ground, which we know is 18 feet. And what we're asked to find is the distance from the top of the building. So let's say right here is the top of the building to the end of the shadow. So let's say the shadow ends here. So from the top of the building to the end of the shadow, we can draw a line. And this line is not perfectly straight, to say the least, because of my not so good drawing abilities. But let's just say, let me try that again. Okay, probably worse the second time. But anyway, once we draw this picture out, hopefully it becomes clear that what we're trying to find is the length of this side right here. And this hopefully is clear that we now have a triangle. And this is actually a 90-degree triangle. And whenever we have a 90-degree triangle, we can use a magical formula called the Pythagorean theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now, on your test, if you get a question on the Pythagorean theorem, it might even be this could be a ladder leaning against the wall. There's all kinds of different word problem scenarios that they could give you, but the first step here is to recognize that this is a triangle question, a 90-degree triangle question where you can use this formula a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, so that's the first thing you have to see here, and if you didn't know that, that's perfectly okay. Hopefully now you'll know that if you ever see a scenario like this in the future, either in another one of my videos or hopefully on your real test you'll see it, that you have to visualize it like a right triangle. Now, the second most important thing to know here is that side C is the longest side of our triangle, all right? So the side that is directly across from this little box thing in the corner, All right, this side right here is side C. Okay, so the missing side is side C. So all we have to do is we can take 100 and plug it in for A, and we can take 18 and plug it into B. Now you might be wondering, well, what if I plug 18 in for A and what if I plug 100 in for B? How do I remember which side is A and which side is B? And it really doesn't matter. You could plug 18 in for A and 100 in for B, or you could do 100 for A and 18 for B, and you're going to get the same answer. The most important thing is to remember that no matter what, this big side of the triangle, the side across from the little box, always is going to be C. So for A, let's do 100. So let's do 100 squared plus 18 squared. And this all equals C squared. So if I do 100 squared and 18 squared and rewrite this, I'll have 10,000 plus 324 equals C squared. So then if I add these up, I'll have 10,324 equals C squared. So now how do I find out what C is? Well, one really common mistake that some test takers make is to find C squared, they'll think that what they have to do is square this. And that's actually not what we want to do. So if that's what you were thinking, then you're on the right track, but that's not exactly correct. What we really want to do is take the square root of both sides. So instead of squaring this, you want to take the square root, and that's going to just give us C. And if you use your calculator, you're going to see that B is the correct answer here. So this video's champion shoutout goes to a test taker who's been struggling with math right now but isn't giving up and says, I will make sure I defeat the boss. And I really like this attitude, so I just want to wish this test taker the best of luck. And if you're watching this video right now and you've been struggling with math too, know that I'm cheering for you and I really want you to pass too. The points -5 and 2 are plotted on a number line. What is the distance in units between the 2 points? Is it A, B, C, or D? So now's your chance as always to pause the video, take all the time you need with this, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so imagine that we have a little stick figure person right here. And I know that there are people out there that are going to hate on my stick figure, but I'll tell you what, this way of thinking about the question definitely gets results. So we have a stick figure person. The stick figure person is going to start at -5, and the person's going to go for a walk until they get to 2. And if we just count the number of steps along the way, that's going to give us the right answer. So let me show you. So if our person goes from -5 to -4, that's 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And just like that, we've got 7 as our answer. So I'll tell you what, I know there's people out there that are going to hate on my stick figure, but look how fast we got the answer using our stick figure drawing. The other way is just to do -5 minus 2 and then do the absolute value of the answer. And that'll also give you the same answer. So let's do that. -5 minus 2. -5 minus 2 is -7. And we want to do the absolute value. So -7 is going to become +7. All right. So, hey, that actually is also a very fast way to do this question. So just 2 ways to think about this. You're free to pick whatever makes the most sense for you. But 7B is the correct answer here. Jeff has several bills to pay off. If Jeff wants to pay off the bills in order from largest to smallest, in what order will Jeff pay off his bills? And we see right here the amount for his hospital, his phone, his credit card, and utilities bill. And we have answer choices A, B, C, and D. So I'll turn it over to you now. Now is your chance to pause the video, take all the time you need with this, and whenever you're ready, simply unpause the video and we'll talk about it. Okay, so for questions like this, whenever you see a question on your test that asks you to rank something in order from largest to smallest or smallest to largest, I would recommend just stopping, taking a deep breath, and just making sure you're reading correctly, because one common mistake students sometimes make is when that time's ticking down and you have all that stress from the test going on. Sometimes people will do this in the reverse and they'll read something that says largest to smallest and they will start ranking them in order from smallest to largest. So it's always helpful to just do a double take and make sure you're reading correctly. All right, that being said, the answer here is A. And if you had trouble with this, I do have a video, GED Math Basics, and I'll put a link to that down below. And I think that will help you see some more examples of how to rank numbers. The type of baby formula Kate buys for her 6-month-old son is regularly priced at $50 per box. During a week-long sale, the price was decreased to $40 per box. Which of the following is the percentage decrease of the price of one box of formula during the sale? Is it A, 20%, B, 75%, C, 10%, or D, 80%? So now's your chance to pause the video. You can take all the time you need with this, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so in order to get this question right, what we have to do is we're going to want to do 50 minus 40, and we're going to then divide by 50, and then to get our percent, we'll multiply by 100. Okay, so basically, again, we take the original price, we are going to subtract the new price. Okay, then we're going to divide by that original price, which was 50. And then we're going to multiply by 100, and that gives us the answer. So this is kind of how you would work your way through the question right here. Plugging this in your calculator simply gives us A as the answer. So A is the correct answer here. Hopefully this makes sense. The drawing above shows a spinner, and the drawing's not really above, it's actually right here to the left, but it says, which has been divided into 5 equal sections. If you spin the spinner once, what is the probability of getting red? And we see here we've got a red, a blue, a yellow, a red, and another green section. So I'll let you pause the video, try this one out, and if you get stuck, no worries. As always, we're just going to go over the answer. Okay, so the basic formula for probability is probability equals the number of favorable outcomes divided by the number of possible outcomes. So in this case here, what is the probability of getting red? Well, how many chances are there to get red? Well, there are 1, 2. There are 2 different chances to get red. And what's the total number of possible outcomes? Well, really it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 possible outcomes. So you would do 2 over 5, and C is the correct answer here. So it says now the drawing above shows a spinner, and again, the drawing's not really above, it's to the side here. And it says the spinner has been divided into 5 equal sections. This time the question is, if you spin the spinner once, what is the probability of not getting green? So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so we're still dealing with the same probability formula here, the number of favorable outcomes divided by the number of possible outcomes. And this is another topic that I have a video that I go more in depth on probability if you're having trouble understanding this. But basically, this time what we want to do is count up the number of colors that aren't green. So we've got red, we've got 2, we've got blue, 3 is yellow, 4 is red. So there are 4 colors that are not green. So favorable outcomes is going to be 4, and the possible outcomes is still going to be 5 possible colors here. So the answer here is A, 4 over 5. And like I said, if you're having trouble with probability, I know I'm throwing a lot at you here pretty quickly, so I do have a video on probability. I'll put a link to that down below in the description. Jade is doing research on the number of units sold for some of her favorite video game consoles, which she lists in the table below. Please put your answer in the box below. What is the median number of units sold for all platforms? So now's your chance to pause the video, and whenever you're ready, just unpause it and we'll go over the answer. So when it comes to finding the median, a lot of test takers seem to remember that the median has something to do with the middle number, and that is true, but that's not the whole story. So the whole story is that whenever you're trying to find the median, you first want to put the numbers in order from smallest to largest. And so that's what I'm doing here. And just remember, I'm going to repeat it because if it's worth saying once, it's worth saying again and again and again. For any median question, just stop and put the numbers in order from smallest to largest first. Now, unfortunately, my own favorite system, the N64, has the least number of units sold out of everything on this list here. And I guess it's kind of hard to say that with all the stuff that modern systems can do now, it's really hard to say the N64 is a better system than modern gaming systems, but some of the greatest games of all time, in my opinion, and some of my favorite games are on the N64, so that's why I would say it's my favorite system, just because of the games, but that's my random opinion that you didn't ask for and probably didn't care about. But anyway, now what I did was I just wrote the numbers in order from smallest to largest and went on a little tangent while I did that, but this is the first step here. Okay, and so now next what we want to do is we want to find that middle number, and in this case it's actually fairly easy because we have an odd number of numbers that we're working with here. So really, if we go right to left, so let's cross off this number, 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 and the one that's left right in the middle would be 117.2. All right, so this is actually a pretty straightforward case of finding the median. But remember, you want to put the numbers in order from smallest to largest first, okay? And if we had an even number of numbers here, you wouldn't have just one number in the middle that would jump out. So if we had an even number of numbers here, you'd have to take the two numbers that are in the center, you'd have to add them up, and you'd have to divide that by 2. That's how you get the median. And just remember, to get the mean, the way I would do that is I would take all these numbers, I would add them up, and I would count up how many there are here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and divide by 5, and that would give me the median. If a sphere has a radius of 18.2 centimeters, what is the volume of the sphere? And just to save you some time, I put the formula for the volume of a sphere right here. On your test, you'll have to go to your formula sheet and pick out this formula, but I just put it here to save you some time for now, since we're just practicing. And I want you to calculate this and tell me, is it A, B, C, or D? So now's your chance to pause the video if you'd like to, try this out, and when you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so basically here, before we jump in, it's always a good idea whenever you have to do a calculation with the radius to make sure that you're given the radius value, right? So right here is pretty easy. They gave us the radius of 18.2, but just note that they might tell you that if a sphere is a diameter of this, and if they do that, you're going to have to cut that number in half before you can plug it in. So if they ever just tell you the diameter, don't plug that in for the radius, cut that number in half first. Okay, so that's one point that's important to take away from this question. But anyway, here we have 4/3 pi r cubed. And so if you look down at our answer choices, note how we don't see the pi symbol in any of our answer choices. Sometimes they won't make you actually use pi in your calculation. Sometimes they'll just leave pi in the answer choices. But in this case, we don't see pi in the answer choices, so we're just going to use the number 3.14 in place of this pi symbol. Okay, and so for the r cubed part, we're just going to take this 18.2 and we're going to plug it in here and cube it. And since I said it before, you'll hopefully remember for your test that if they give you the diameter of the sphere or the circle or whatever the shape happens to be, you'll know to divide that by 2 or cut it in half to get the radius before you plug it into the formula. Okay, so if we crunch the number here, we're going to get answer choice C. And sometimes students will ask, how do I know how to round on the test? Will I have to round to the nearest 100? Will I have to round to the nearest cubic centimeter? The answer is you just do the calculation in your calculator and then find the answer choice that's closest to what you got, all right? I know that might not really fully answer your question, but sometimes they'll make you round to the nearest whole number, sometimes it'll be the nearest tenth, sometimes they'll come out and tell you. If they don't make it clear, like I said, just do the calculation, pick whatever number's closest, and that should be good. So I have a really quick tip before you go to the next question. It's actually really important, and I have on the screen the formula sheet that you'll use on your test. It's going to look basically just like this. It might have some minor variations, but this is about what I'd expect you to get. You can access this, just go on Google and type in GED formula sheet or something like that, and find the one from GED.com. That's probably the best way to get to this. And basically, I just want to point out that sometimes in the stress of a test, it's really easy to pick the wrong formula. So if the question asks you to calculate the volume of a sphere, okay, what I would do is I would just come down here and just find the word sphere on your sheet, and then make sure that if it's asking you about volume, you pick the formula with the V in front of it. Okay, if it's asking you for surface area, you want to pick the one that says SA. And I know that sounds really simple. I know it sounds like common sense, and I'm sure you'll get this right on your test. But I'm just telling you because it's one thing when you're sitting here practicing and you're hopefully relaxed in your home, but it's a lot different story when you're on the test and you've got that time actually ticking down and you've got that pressure and you know that you've got a lot of other questions to get to. It can be very stressful, and sometimes simple basic things kind of go out to lunch in the testing situation. So I'm just telling you now so that you know, just make sure that if it's asking you for the volume of a sphere or whatever shape it happens to be, pick the actual formula with the V. Don't try to do the calculation with the SA, okay, and vice versa. Jane sets a goal to run 200 miles total in 1 month as part of her training for a marathon. In the first week of the month, she ran 25 miles. During the second week of the month, she ran triple what she ran the first week. How many miles must she run in the rest of the month combined to reach her goal for the month? Is it A, 50, B, 75, C, 25, or what about D, 100? So now's your chance to pause the video, take all the time you need with this, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so first of all, let's add up the amount that she ran initially. So in the first week, she ran 25 miles, and then she ran triple that the next week. So 25 times 3, or triple 25, is 75. Okay, 25 plus 75 is 100. So in the first 2 weeks, she ran 100 miles, and her goal is to run 200 miles total. So the question, how many miles must she run in the rest of the month combined? Well, we're going to take her goal, which is 200, and let's subtract the amount that she ran already, which is that 100, and we just get 100. So she has 100 miles left to run to hit her goal. D is the correct answer. Ron has picked out the next 8 books he will read, but he has not yet determined in which order he will read them. How many possible orderings of the 8 books are there? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So now's your chance to pause the video, take all the time you need with this question, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so basically on the first pick, right, there's 8 possible books. So then let's say that he reads one of the books, and then on the second pick, right, there's 7 possible choices to choose from. So then he reads the second book, and then after that, when he goes to pick the next book, there are 6 possibilities, and then there's going to be 5 after that, and then 4, and then 3. All right, and hopefully you're getting the point, and then 2, and then 1. And we don't really even need to write times 1, but I'll just put it anyway. In short, what you're going to do here is in your calculator, you're going to do 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2. And you can do times 1, but really you don't need to because it's not going to change the answer. But anyway, you will get A as the correct answer once you crunch these numbers in your calculator. So A is the right answer here. Brad wants to replay some of his favorite PlayStation PS1 games. First, he beats all 3 Spyro games for the PS1. Next, he plays through the Crash Bandicoot trilogy for the PS1, beating games 2 and 3 in the series. He gave up on Crash 1 because it was too hard for him. He records the number of hours each game took to beat in the chart below. And your question this time is, what is the mode of the dataset? And it says, please put your answer in the box below, but obviously you can't physically write through the screen, so just imagine or write down on a sheet of paper maybe what answer you would put in the box if you could. So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so just a quick recap here. The mean means the average. To find the mean, you would take all these numbers, add them up, and divide by the total number of numbers we have here. To find the median, you'd put these numbers in order from smallest to largest and find the middle number. If you have an even number of numbers, then you have to take the 2 numbers in the middle, add those up, and divide by 2. And to find the mode, what you do is you look for the most occurring number. So the mode is the most occurring number. So 6 shows up once, 9 shows up once, 8 shows up once, but 7 shows up twice. So 7 is the mode. So again, to find the mode, you just look for whichever number shows up the most amount of times, and that's your mode. So this question is for you to try without a calculator, and it says evaluate the expression 11x plus 3 parenthesis 2y minus 3 parenthesis minus 3z when x equals 2, y equals 5, and z equals -1. And it says, please put your answer in the box below. And again, you obviously can't do this through the screen, but just maybe write down on a sheet of paper or just keep in mind what the answer should be. And now's your chance to pause the video, give this one a try if you'd like to, and then whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so for a question like this, basically, we're told that x equals 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into my expression here, and where I see an x, I'm just going to replace that with a 2. Now I'm going to do the same with y. So since it tells me that y equals 5, everywhere that I see a y, which is right here, I'm going to replace that with a 5. And the same with this z right here. I'm going to replace that with -1. Okay, so let me rewrite this now with the numbers. Okay, so I've just rewritten this all out, how it should look with the numbers substituted in. And on your test, obviously, it's up to you to decide if you want to rewrite the work every single time. But for the purposes of instruction, I'm just slowing down to hopefully make this more clear. So let me work with what's inside my parentheses here first. So 2 times 5 right here is going to be 10. So this 2 times 5 becomes 10. Then -3 is going to give me 7. So I'm going to rewrite this here. again. So I will have 11 times 2 plus 3 times 7 minus 3 times -1. Okay, so now I'm just going to work left to right here. 11 times 2 is 22. Now 3 times 7 is 21. And right here I've got minus 3 times -1. So this is going to become plus 3 because a negative times a negative is a positive. And 3 times 1 is just 3. Okay, so now here what I have is 22 plus 21 plus 3. It doesn't hurt to just write things vertically sometimes on your test. Now, obviously, it's up to you to decide if this is how you want to do it on your test. But I personally, whenever I'm doing work without a calculator, I like to just line things up number on top of number on top of number. I just think that's easier to see personally, but of course, that's up to you. So 2 plus 1 is 3, plus another 3 is 6. And 2 plus 2 is 4. So the final answer that should be in your box here is 46. So the next question, simplify parenthesis 3 raised to the 7 times 4 raised to the third parenthesis times parenthesis 4 squared times 3 parenthesis squared. Is the answer A, B, C, or D? Now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so the first move that I want to make here is I'm going to take this 2. Since this 4 squared times 3 is squared, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this 2 times 2, and then I'm also going to take this 3, which is raised to the first power, and I'm going to do 2 times 1. Okay, so let me rewrite this here. What I'm doing here is, again, this 2, I'm going to multiply by this 2 right here. And I'm going to keep the base the same. The base is just my 4. So I keep my 4 and I do 2 times 2. That's how I get 4 to the 4th. And we're going to do the same thing to the 3. Okay, so any number that's just written like a number, okay, I just assume it's raised to the first power. Okay, so that's why I'm going to do 2 times 1 here. And I'm going to keep that 3 as my base. All right, so 2 times 1 is 2. I want to take numbers that have the same bases, and I'm going to work with those. And so what I can do here, if I have 3 raised to the 7th, and it's multiplied by 3 squared, I'm just going to keep that same base, so I'm going to keep my 3, and I'm just going to do 7 plus 2. All right, so this is going to become 3 to the 9. Because 7 plus 2 is 9. What I want to do is I'm going to do the same thing with my 4s here. I want to keep the base is the same here. So 4 cubed and 4 raised to the 4th. I'm just going to keep that 4 here, and I'm just going to add 3 plus 7. Or sorry, 3 plus 4, which is going to give me 7. So my final answer should be 3 to the 9th times 4 to the 7. And actually, in the answer choice here, we see it written the other way around. We see it 4 to the 7 times 3 to the 9th. Okay, but it's the same answer. If you're just totally confused right now, it wouldn't hurt to review your exponent rules whenever you get a chance if you'd like to, so I'll put a link down below to that video. So your next question says, what is the volume of the cylinder shown below in cubic centimeters? Okay, so your next question says, what is the volume of the cylinder shown below in cubic centimeters? And we see 12 right here, we see 14 right here, we see answers A, B, C, and D. And to save you some time, up top here, I've given you the formula for the volume of a cylinder. It's V equals pi r squared h. And just note that on your test, you're going to have to, if you see something asking you about the volume of a cylinder, you're going to have to look this up on your formula sheet. But just to save you some time, I gave you the formula here. So let me give you a chance to try this out. So note that on your test, they might just point blank ask you to find the volume of a cylinder, like I'm doing in this question here. Or they might also give you like a word problem where they give you like a soup can, or it could be a soda or a pop can, something like that. And basically anything that's shaped like the cylinder down here. If you look at this, you can see how it kind of looks like a soup can. Okay, so with that said, let's get into the calculation here. So one mistake that I'm sure at least one person watching this, maybe you made, is you looked at this 12 centimeters and you plugged this 12 into the formula for the radius. And if you did that, that's okay. I like the thought process, but just note here for your test that, this distance, 12 centimeters, this is measuring the whole way across to this circular portion of the cylinder. And really, if you look at the circular portion of the cylinder, all right, the radius is only going to be half the distance across. So really, the number that I'm going to plug into the formula for R is 6 and not 12. All right, so if you made that mistake, I do like that you were on the right track, and I do like the thought process, but just note that in a lot of cases, they'll try to trip you up on the test and they'll give you the diameter, and you'll have to cut that in half to get the radius. All right. So if you made that mistake, no worries. Okay. Hopefully, it's a learning experience for you, and I'd rather you make that mistake now than on the real test. All right. So basically, all we're going to do now is we will just do the math in the calculator. That's probably the easiest way to do this. So 6 squared is 36. 36 times 14 is 504. And I have v equals pi times 504. And the answer choice, we have 504 times pi. It's the same thing. So B is the correct answer here. And so just note that sometimes students have questions. They'll say, do I have to just leave pi like this in my answer choices, or do I actually have to do 504 times 3.14? All right. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just know that this symbol pi, it's approximately 3.14. Okay. I mean, there's a bunch of other digits that this number just goes on and on and on and on. But for the purposes of your test, it wouldn't hurt to memorize that pi is approximately 3.14. Okay, so if you just see pi left in your answer choices like this, then you don't have to multiply the answer you calculated by 3.14. But if you don't see them leaving pi in the answer choice, you're going to have to do whatever number you get here, multiply that by 3.14, and you're going to be okay. A scale drawing of a building uses a scale of 1.5 inches equal to 2 feet. What is the length in inches of a line on the scale drawing that represents an actual length of 25 feet? Is it A, B, C, or D? So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so there's some kind of power tool that they're using outside of my apartment. I'm not sure what they're doing, but I do apologize if this noise gets into the audio. I will try to remove the background noise when I edit this video, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get it all, so I do apologize in advance. So what we're going to do for this question here is we're going to start off with this 25 feet. So that's why I wrote this first. And I'm going to take the fact that their scale uses 1.5 inches being equal to 2 feet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 feet down here in my fraction, and I'm going to stick 1.5 inches up here. Okay. What in the world happened with my drawing? There we go. 1.5 inches. Now, the reason I set it up this way is because when I do the math in my calculator and crunch these numbers, we're dividing feet by feet, and the units are going to cancel out and leave me in an answer that is going to be in inches, which is what I want here. So in my calculator, I do 25 times 1.5 divided by 2, and my answer is going to be in inches, and my answer is 18.75. So hopefully this makes sense. So I think we can all agree that math can be pretty boring sometimes, so in the champion facts segments of my videos, I like to just pop out from behind the screen and answer some questions from a random question generator. Sometimes the questions get kind of awkward, hopefully they won't today. But I just do this to keep the video more fun and to give you a little break from thinking so hard. And if you think I'm just wasting your time by doing this, just let me know down below in the comments. Do you have any pets in your office? I do have a pet cat. You've probably seen him if you've watched my videos before, but he is not in the office right now. Where were you born? Pennsylvania. What is your go-to movie theater snack? Peanut M&Ms for sure. What was your first job? I worked at a gas station, I was a cashier, and I also just basically mopped the floors and did stuff like that. The next question says, what is the slope of a straight line that contains the points 416 and 1017? And just to save you some time, I put the formula for slope right here, but on the test you'll obviously have to look this up on your formula sheet. So now's your chance to pause the video, give this one a shot, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over it. Okay, so first of all, when you see the formula here, note that this little m, this represents the word slope. So the first number in the parentheses, this is always going to be an x. So I'm going to make this 4 my x1, and this 16 here, the second number is always a y, so I'm going to make the 16 y1. So now I'm going to come over to this pair here, and what am I going to call this 10? Well, it's the first number in the pair, so it's going to be an x. And this over here was already x1, so I want to make this x2. Now same with the 17, so 17 is the second number in the pair, so we automatically know it's going to be a y. And since this was our y1 here, this must be y2. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my y2, which is 17. And so I'm going to come up here and I'm going to plug that into the formula for y2. My y1 is 16, just like I labeled it. So I'm going to put that in for y1 right here. Now my x2, I already labeled 10 as x2. So that's going to go right in here for x2. And the last step is to take this 4 and plug it in here for x1. Now I know this looks like a bunch of gibberish with all these arrows, so let me rewrite this and show you how it should look. So after I rewrite this all, it should look like this. Slope equals 17 minus 16 divided by 10 minus 4. So now I'm just going to finish the math out here. So 17 minus 16 is 1, 10 minus 4 is 6, and the correct answer here is C, 1 over 6. Which expression is undefined in the set of real numbers? Is it A, 20 over 0, B, 0 over 20, C, 9 raised to the 0 power, or D, negative 2 square root of 8. So now's your chance, as always, to pause the video, take all the time you need, and if you get stuck, don't worry, because we're just going to go over the answer. Okay, so whenever you see this word undefined, there's usually two things that you need to check the question for, and so one of them is this. So these are just two things you just kind of have to memorize. Okay, so you can never have a negative number under your square root. Okay, so if you ever see this, a negative under the square root, for a question that says which of these is undefined, that's most likely going to be the right answer. And you also can never divide by 0. Okay, so any number, doesn't matter what it is, you can't divide the number by 0. So a big part of getting these questions right is to just look through the answers one by one and find a case where it's either a negative under the square root or a number that they're trying to divide by 0, and that's going to be your answer. Okay, so this right here, 20 divided by 0, right off the bat, we know that that's wrong because you can't divide by 0. Now, you can go the other way around. You can do 0 divided by 20. That's fair game. That's legal in math laws, but you can't go the other way around. And if you ever forget this, just simply pull out your calculator and try to do 0 divided by 20, and your calculator is going to let you do that. But try to go the other way. Do 20 divided by 0, and your calculator is going to give you an error message. So that's how you know that this is not a legal move in math. So 9 raised to the 0 power, any number raised to the 0 is just going to be 1. And D right here, okay, if this was negative 8 under the square root, then D would be your answer. All right, it is okay to have like a case like this where you have a negative number and then you've got your square root. You just can't have a negative under the square root. Kelly inherits a new property shown in the picture below. What is the area in square feet of Kelly's new property? Is it A, B, C, or D? And just for the sake of time, I put the formula here that you'll need to use for this question, but just know in the test that you'll have to, if you get a question like this, you'll have to recognize what the shape is and find this formula on your sheet. Now let me give you a chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and when you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So I actually debated whether or not to give you the formula here because it kind of gives away what the shape is, but this is a trapezoid, and if you didn't know that this was a trapezoid, don't worry. If I didn't do GED prep videos, I probably wouldn't have known that was a trapezoid either, but just kind of burn this image into your memory bank so that if on the test you get a shape like this, you'll remember that this is a trapezoid, and you'll know to pick out the formula for the area of a trapezoid on your formula sheet. And as always, just for the sake of saving you some time, I just put the formula here since we're only practicing. But basically, when you have a trapezoid, the next thing to know is you just have to identify which is what. And so for an area calculation, these numbers on the sides here, the 37 and 39, these aren't going to play into our calculation here. So don't worry about these numbers on the sides. The numbers that you want to use are this 30, this 68, and this 42 right here. Okay, and so this 42 is your height, and if you want an easy way to remember it, you can just kind of look at this dotted line here, see how it's kind of going up and down here. This is 42 feet high, so just kind of picture that this line right here is the height. And as far as the bases go, all right, there are two different bases here, obviously. There's this base right here, and this base down here. Okay, and you might be wondering, how do I know which one's base 1 and which one's base 2? And for the purposes of the calculation, all right, it doesn't actually really matter. It's still going to give you the same answer regardless of the order. So what I mean by that is, all right, where it says to plug in base 1 plus base 2, it doesn't really matter which number you put first. So I'm going to do 30 plus 68. Okay, but if you get these numbers backwards and you do 68 plus 30, it's going to give you the exact same answer. So don't stress out about remembering which one is base 1 and which one is base 2 necessarily. Just remember that these are the two bases you'll have to use and put them into the formula here. So now we just do the math. So we're going to do half times 42 times 30 plus 68. And if we crunch these numbers in our calculator, the answer that we're going to get here is B. So this is really just a matter of recognizing this is a trapezoid, finding the area formula for a trapezoid, and then just knowing which numbers to put into the formula. The line graph shows Dave's monthly electric bill from January through August. Now on the left here it says monthly bill in $100, and down here is just giving us the months. And so I tried to make this graph as big as possible in case you're watching this on a phone or another device with a small screen. So I put the question over here. The question is, which time period shows a decrease? Is it A, January through February, B, May through June, or D, March through April? So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so for a question like this, basically what we can do is we can just go one by one here. So let's look at January through February. And to check January through February, I just need to look at what's happening on the graph between the points of January through February. Oops. So that'd be like right here. Okay, so to evaluate January and February, I don't need to check anything else that's going on over here. This doesn't matter that much. And if I just imagined a stick figure person on the left-hand side was going to start here at the leftmost part of the line, right here, and just follow the line, the person would be going up a hill. Okay, so that means that there was an increase during this time period. So we can take January through February off just based off of that. Now, what about May through June? Well, to check May through June, I only need to direct my attention to what's happening during May through June. Okay, so I'm going to kind of zoom in on that period, and obviously you can't draw bars like this. I'm just for the purposes of instruction, just kind of helping you, just trying to help you, show you where to focus on the graph to evaluate May through June, which would be this interval right here. And if we imagined a stick figure person was going to start, all right, on the leftmost part of the line, and if this person just followed the line, would they be going uphill, downhill, or walking on a flat line? Well, they would be going downhill. So actually, this is the time period that shows decrease. Now, you might be wondering, isn't it faster to just look at the line and just tell without having to draw out stick figures? And the answer is yes, absolutely. So if you can just look at the time period here and just tell just from looking at it that it's a decrease during this time period, then that's the faster way to do it. And eventually I would like for hopefully everybody to be able to do it that way. But I think when you're just starting out, it's kind of helpful to use the stick figure method to kind of visualize what's happening. On your test, it's obviously up to you how you'd like to do it. Round 1,587 to the nearest 100. Please put your answer in the box below. So obviously you can't really write your answer in the box, but now's a good time to pause the video, try to figure this out, and let me know what answer you think should go in the box. Okay, so to do this question here, the first step is to find what number is in the hundreds place. So 7 is in the ones, 8 is in the tens, 5 is in the hundreds, and this 1 here is in the thousands place. So 5 is in the hundreds. So the next step is go to the number immediately to the right of our 5, and we want to check, is this number less than 5 or is it a 5 or greater? So 8 is going to obviously be a greater number than 5. So that means that we have to round up. So I'm going to rewrite this, and I'm going to take this 5 and I'm going to bump it up to a 6. And for the 8 and the 7, I'm just going to fill those in with zeros. And this is the right answer here. Please choose the correct translation for the following. 11 more than a number is 25. Is it A, B, C, or D? So now's your chance to pause the video, give this a try, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so one thing to note here is that the word is can often be translated into an equal sign. So in this case, we have 11 more than some number is 25. Now, we don't know what this number is, so when we do the translation, we're going to just put a random letter or variable in the place here. And here in the multiple choice answers, they have B, but it could have also been A, it could be X, it could be Y. It doesn't really matter, but the correct answer here is B. We take this statement and we put this into math terms. As you can see, we've got 11 plus some number is or equals 25. So B is the correct answer here. Which expression is undefined in the set of real numbers? Is it A, B, C, or D? So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so for these types of questions, typically what you're trying to do is you're trying to look at the answer choices and you're trying to look for one of two cases here. So the first case would be if you see a number divided by 0, which you can never do in math, or if you see a negative number underneath a square root. And my square root symbol is pretty rough looking here. So basically, let's check the answer choices here. A, 0 divided by 115. Well, this is fair game. You can do 0 divided by 115, but if this were the other way around, if A was 115 divided by 0, can't do 115 divided by 0, or any number divided by 0. And if you ever get this confused, just pull out your calculator and try this. Do 0 divided by 115, it's going to give you 0. But if you go the other way around and you do 115 divided by 0 in your calculator, it's going to give you an error message. So 0 raised to the first power, that's fine. But then if we look at C here, we see a negative number underneath the square root. So C is the correct answer here. Ryan likes to play horror video games, but occasionally he gets so scared while playing that he has to take a break before resuming play. Some of Ryan's favorite horror games are Resident Evil 2, Silent Hill 2, Silent Hill 3, Fatal Frame 2, Crimson Butterfly, and Amnesia: The Dark Descent. He can remember the exact number of breaks he took while playing every game except for Amnesia: The Dark Descent. However, he does remember the average number of breaks he took while playing all 5 games is 12. Question: if the mean number of breaks Ryan took while playing all 5 games was 12, how many breaks did he take while playing Amnesia: The Dark Descent? So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So for whatever reason, whenever I teach an example of this type of question, I always get a lot of comments where people are angry and they try to argue with me over how to do the question. I'm really not sure why that is. I mean, these types of questions, this is one of the harder types of questions on the GED test for sure. But I think even though it might seem complicated, I think once you see how to do it, hopefully it'll be more simple. But for whatever reason, I've always get a lot of comments where people kind of fight with me and argue with me over how to do these questions. I'm really not sure why that is. And I do take feedback seriously. I have used it to make changes before on my channel. So I am going to teach you a formula for getting a question like this right. And I've never taught this before. In my personal opinion, giving you this formula, it just kind of adds one more thing for you to memorize for your test. But hey, if you use this formula and it gets you the right answer, then that's great. But anyway, all you're going to do is you're going to count up the number of breaks from the known breaks. And what I mean by known breaks would be the breaks here that have numbers that we know what they are. So for Amnesia, we don't know what this is, okay? So all you're going to do, you would do 2 plus 2 plus 3 plus 2, which gives us 9. So for some of the known breaks here, I just added up all the breaks that I know, and I got 9. Okay, so I'm going to start with 9, and I'm going to do 9 plus x. Okay, and obviously it's probably not going to be breaks in a question that you get if you get this on your test. It's going to, whatever this happens to be. Okay, you just take up all the numbers that you know what they are, you add those up, and then you do plus x. Okay, so down here, number of values in the data set. So all I mean by that is we count up the number of numbers here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a 5 is going to go down here. Okay, and we count up all the numbers, including the one that we don't know what it is. Okay, and so then you set this equal to the mean. And the whole point here is that we have to know what the mean is to get this to work. And we do. We know that the mean number of breaks or the average number of breaks, two ways of saying the same thing, we know that that was 12. So for mean, we can just plug in 12. All right. So now hopefully this is looking less intimidating. We've got 9 plus x over 5 equals 12. And the name of the game is to get this x by itself. If we get x by itself, that's going to tell us the total number of breaks that he took while playing Amnesia. So what I want to do, the first move I'm going to make here is I'm going to multiply both sides by 5. Now let me explain why I'm doing this, and this is important here. If I multiply this side by 5, what's going to happen is this 5 down here in the denominator is going to cancel out. And I'm going to be left with 9 plus x, which gets us closer to our goal of figuring out what this x is. But whatever I do to one side, I also have to do it to the other, which is really important for math. So if I multiply this side by 5, I also have to do it over here. So I rewrite this. I have 9 plus x equals 60. Okay, and 12 times 5 is 60. That's where the 60 came from, in case you were wondering. So now, what do I do to get this x by itself? Well, since it's 9 plus x, if I subtract 9 from the left-hand side, the 9s will cancel out and leave me with x. But whatever I do to one side, I have to also do it to the other. Okay, so I have to subtract 9 from 60. And if I do this, x is going to equal 51, which is the right answer here. Tell me, what's your best tip for GED math? You don't have any? Thanks anyway. What is the perimeter of the triangle shown below measured in feet? Is it A, B, C, or D? And just to save you some time, I put the formula right here. This will be on your formula sheet on the GED test. So let me give you a chance to pause the video and try this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so let's talk about this. So basically what you're going to do is you're just going to add up each side, and the order doesn't really matter. Okay, so I'm going to do 44 plus 22 plus 21 here, but it doesn't really matter. You could do 21 plus 22 plus 44, however you want to do it here. All right, it's going to get you the same answer either way, and you're going to get 87 as the answer, so C is correct. For which value of x is the expression 19 divided by 2x plus 16 undefined? Is it A, B, C, or D? So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so these questions might seem like they're pretty complicated at first, but it's actually hopefully going to be fairly simple for you to remember how to solve these on the test. So all you want to do is you take whatever's happening in the bottom here, so take your denominator, which in this case it's 2x plus 16, and you just set that equal to 0, and you're going to solve the equation for x. All that means is that you want to get x by itself on one side of the equation. So we've got 2x plus 16. I'm going to start by subtracting 16, and whatever I do to one side, I also have to do it to the other here. So my 16s cancel out on the left-hand side of my equation, so I'm going to have 2x equals negative 16 when I rewrite. 2x, that's 2 times x. How am I going to get x by itself? Well, I want to do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. So if I do 2 divided by 2, the 2's will cancel out, leaving me with x. But whatever I do to one side, I also have to do it to the other side as well. So I'll have x equals negative 8 as my answer. And it's really that simple. And let me just explain before you get to the next question why this makes sense. Okay, if you try to come back here and you take this negative 8 and plug it into the equation here for x, all right, what's going to happen is you'll end up with 19 divided by 2 times negative 8, which is negative 16, plus 16. And negative 16 plus 16 is 0. So you'll end up with 19 divided by 0. And you can't do this. You can never divide by 0. All right, so that's why this makes sense. Sally did 30 push-ups on Monday and 40 push-ups on Saturday. How many push-ups did she do altogether? Is it A, B, C, or D? So now's your chance to pause the video, try this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. One thing that I want you to see here is that this word altogether is a keyword, and that keyword is usually going to mean addition. So all we have to do here is we're going to do 30 plus 40, and 30 plus 40 equals 70. So D is the correct answer here. So since I brought up keywords, you might be wondering what are other keywords to know for my test. So let me give you those keywords, and I'm going to explain it in the framework of a 5-step strategy to get more word problems right on your test. And so this strategy is not going to work for every single type of word problem, but for your basic word problems and even your multi-step word problems, this strategy is going to be a good way to help you think through them. And this is not a strategy that I came up with by any means, but basically the quick story behind this is that I used to teach this strategy and I started teaching it on YouTube. And around that time, I kept hearing people talk about the internet, Verizon Fios, and my internet was really bad at the time. And I did not end up switching to Verizon Fios, but that word Fios actually stuck in my head. And I thought that if you just remember that one word, Fios, it often helps you remember the 5 steps here. And the first step for any word problem is to always think, what do I need to find here? And for a simple, more straightforward word problem, it might not make a lot of sense to focus on that, but I think that once you get more complicated word problems, especially a multi-step word problem, all right, oftentimes you'll be in the middle of your test and you'll get a word problem where they just bombard you with tons of different information here. And, you think about all you have on the line here and you think about that time ticking down and you've got a bunch of other questions to answer, and it can be stressful and it can cause people sometimes to kind of panic when they just see a big long word problem with all this intimidating information. So that's why I think it's helpful to just break it up, take a deep breath and just zoom in on what you have to find first. Okay. And the second step is the I. Look at the information that you're given. Think about, is there any information that I'm going to need to solve this question? And that might not always be obvious. And also just look at the information and just think, is any of this irrelevant? All right. Because sometimes they'll give you too much information and you're not going to need to use all of it. And then the next step is operation or operation. So you want to ask, what operation or what operations do I need to do to get the question right? And the S does two things. The S stands for solve and sense. So you want to solve the question here or solve the problem and ask, does my answer make sense? The basic definitions for addition, the definition would be to combine, subtract is to find the difference, multiplication, combine more than once, and division, to break a number into equal size groups. So here is a list of keywords for addition, and for all the keywords that I'm going to show you, my recommendation is to keep these in the back of your mind and let these guide you through the questions. Okay, you still have to think critically, you still have to solve problems. Memorizing these keywords, this doesn't give you some kind of magic bullet that's going to let you get any question right. You still have to think critically and use problem solving skills. But anyway, just to help guide you here, for addition, we have add, sum, altogether, total, increase, in all, and plus. For subtraction, less than, decrease, difference, left, and lost. And a quick tip, the words more and than will be separated in some subtraction problems, so just keep that in mind. Now also for multiplication, we have product, times, total, as much, of, by, and twice. And you might have noticed that on our keyword list for addition, we had total, and we also see that total shows up on multiplication. So that's just a perfect example here of why it's important to still think critically when you're problem solving. All right, so if you just memorize the list for addition and you see the word total and you think that always means you're going to have to add, that's not the case, because we see right here that total can also be a keyword for multiplication. So this is just another reminder to always think critically. Just use the keywords to guide you, but at the end of the day, do your own thinking. All right, and a quick tip here. Okay, I just said this, blah, blah, blah. Division, each, quotient, out of, average, equal, / equal pieces, and per. Okay, and for equals, we have is and are. So the next question says, what is the equation of a line passing through the points 12, 1, and 6, -1? Is it A, B, C, or D? And to save you time, I've given you the two formulas that you need, the slope of a line and the point slope form of the equation of a line. As always, you'll have to get these from your formula sheet on the test. So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so for equation of the line questions, any typical question that's like this, the first step is always going to be to find the slope. Okay, so I'm going to take my first pair. Here are my 12 and my 1. And the first number in a pair is always an x. So I'm going to make 12x1. And the second number in a pair is always a y. So this 1, I'm going to make y1. So for this 6 here, this is x2. And for this for this -1, I should say, that is going to be my y2. Okay, so I always like to start just by labeling everything. So then I'm going to take the slope formula and I'm just going to plug the values right into the formula to calculate my slope. So when I set the calculation up, this is how it should be. Slope equals -1 minus 1 divided by 6 minus 12. All right, so -1 minus 1 is -2. And then I have 6 minus 12, which is -6. And I can simplify this. So first of all, a negative minus a negative is what? A negative minus a negative is going to give me a positive number. And 2 over 6, I can simplify that to 1 over 3. And the way I got that was just if you do 2 divided by 2, you get 1. If you do 6 divided by 2, you get 3. So the slope here is 1/3. So again, the first step to finding the equation of a line is to use the slope formula and get this right here. So next we're going to come up here and we're going to use the point slope form of the equation. And the point slope form of the equation is just plugging more numbers in here. And then we're going to do some math to get the answer here. So y minus y1. So when I set this up, my y minus my y1, I know that my y1 is just simply 1. And my m is 1/3. And so this is going to be multiplied by x minus my x1. And my x1 is right up here, it's 12. So let me kind of draw a box around this just to make it easier to follow here. So I'm working down here, y minus y1 equals slope times x minus x1. And so now what I want to do here is I am going to take this 1/3 and distribute it. So I'm going to do 1/3 times x, and I'm going to then do 1/3 times negative 12. All right, so some people would like to start this by adding the 1 over to the right-hand side first, and that's fine if you want to do it. That way there's really no right or wrong way to do it, but I just like to distribute first, so I'll have 1/3 times x minus, so now I have 1/3 times negative 12, and really that is going to simplify down to 4. And if you're wondering why that makes sense, let me just show you briefly right here. So 1/3 times negative 12 is going to end up with negative 12 over 3, and that is going to simplify to negative 4 because negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4. Okay, so back to the action here. So now I have this set up, y minus 1 equals 1/3 x minus 4. The next step is going to be to get rid of this 1, so I get y by itself here. So I'm going to add 1 over here. Whatever you do to one side, you also have to do it to the other side here. Okay, so I'm going to be left with y equals 1/3 x minus 3, which matches with d, and d, or no, it doesn't. A is the correct answer here, 1/3 x minus 3. So A should be the correct answer here. If the ratio of quarters to nickels in a jar is 5:1 and there are 52 nickels, how much money are the coins worth altogether? Please put your answer in the box below. So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So for any kind of question like this, I always set it up like this. It says quarters to nickels. So when I see that, I'm writing this Q over N. Okay, and it says that in a jar is 5:1. So we know that there's 5 quarters to every 1 nickel. So I'm going to write it out like this, 5/1. Okay, so this is how I'm going to start off the question. Now, we know that there are 52 nickels. So since we know that there are 52 nickels, now I'm going to rewrite this, and instead of writing an n down here, I'm just going to put in 52. This is going to be 5/1. We don't really need to even write the 1 there. So to find the number of quarters, I just have to get this q by itself. So since it's q divided by 52, I want to do multiplication, and that's going to get rid of the 52. So if I multiply by 52, 52's cancel out. And so then over on this side here, I also have to multiply by 52. I'm willing to bet that someone out there watching this video, maybe you correctly found 260 and you said, okay, 260 is the answer, and you were about to move on to the next question. And if you did this, then don't worry. I don't want you to feel bad because you did a really good job by getting this far, so give yourself credit for that. But just a friendly reminder that it's always important to, before you move on from a question, just always remember to check what the question was asking you to find. All right, so we weren't asked to find, in this case, the number of quarters. We're asked to find how much money are the coins worth altogether. So getting the number of quarters here, that was a necessary step. Okay, but we're not quite there yet because we now have to take the number of nickels and figure out how much money that's going to be worth. And then we're going to also do that for the quarters, and we're going to add them up. And if it sounds like that's a lot, well, don't worry. I think it's going to make more sense as we go through this. So if I have 52 nickels, how would I figure out how much money that's worth? Well, 1 nickel is worth 5 cents, or 0.05 in other words. So if I do 52 times 0.05, that gives me 2.6. So we know that the total amount of nickels here is going to be $2.06. So I can do this with the quarters too. So how many quarters do we have? Well, the answer is we have 260 quarters. And how much is 1 quarter worth? Well, 1 quarter is worth 25 cents or 0.25. So if I do 260 times 0.25, I get 65 or $65. So the last step here, since we need to know how much they're worth altogether is a keyword to add. So we do 2.6 plus 65, and the answer here is going to be 67.6. Produce this video's Champions Challenge question. And if you're new here, first of all, thank you for joining us. The Champions Challenge question is when I pick the hardest question in the video, and I call that the Champions Challenge. Now, in this video, it was kind of hard to pick the hardest question here because there were several good candidates that I could have picked here, but ultimately this is the problem I chose. So let me know down below, was this problem the hardest in the video, or do you think something else was harder? If the area of a circle is 100 pi meters, what is the circumference measured in square meters? Is it A, B, C, or D? And here are the two formulas. This is the area of a circle. This is the circumference of a circle. And of course, you'll need to find these on your formula sheet on your test, but I'm giving these to you right now just to save you time since we're only practicing. So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so for this question right here, the first step is, since we know that the area is 100 pi, we're going to take this 100 pi and we're going to come up here and we're going to take this a and we're going to replace it with 100 pi. So when I do that, I will have 100 pi equals pi r squared. Now, fortunately, the pi's are going to cancel out because we've got a pi on both sides of our equal sign. So I can cancel these pi's out, which makes this actually a little bit easier. So what we have here is a really common scenario that comes up on the GED, and this is one that a lot of students for some reason get wrong. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to figure out what r equals, and we know that r squared is 100, and so a lot of people will think that in order to find r, you have to take this 100 and square it, and that's actually not correct. And if you thought that, that's fine. That's a very, very common mistake, so don't feel bad. I'm just pointing this out and just kind of harping on this because this is such a common mistake. And if this comes up on your test in any way, shape, or form, I don't want you to get this wrong because I want you to be able to move ahead faster and not have to keep retaking again and again and again. So what you want to do in this scenario is you're taking the square root of both sides. So don't square 100, take the square root. And I don't know what it is. For some reason, this kind of scenario just really brings out the worst in people. I've had people get very, very angry and just angrily and passionately argue with me over how to do this down in the comments. I'm not sure what it is. And you know what? I'm not just talking about someone disagreeing with me or somebody asking questions. In fact, if you disagree with something in my video or if you have a question, that's perfectly fine. I like reading comments like that. Every now and then I do make mistakes in my videos, so sometimes people will catch a mistake, which I'm grateful that they point out. But I can assure you that this is not a mistake. This is how you do this. And I'm just not sure why. I'll spend a lot of time going off on a little mini rant and tangent whenever these kind of scenarios happen in my videos. And it never fails. I'll come down to my comments and there'll still be somebody arguing with me very passionately and very angrily that the way that you do this is you square 100. And they'll think that if you do 100 squared, that is going to give you r. And that's just not the case, all right? And I'm not sure, again, it's just, this is one of these things that I'll just never fully understand. I've done this for several years now. And almost every time, even if I stop and go off on a huge tangent like I'm doing right now, somebody almost always will come down in the comments and argue with me over this. I just don't know what it is. I really don't. I'm serious. I really don't understand why that is. So you're going to remember, though, for your test that the way you do this is you take a square root. The part of the question that we're at here is 10 equals r. And what we want to do now that we have 10 equals r, I'm going to take this 10. I'm going to come over to the circumference formula, and I'm going to plug that in for r. So I have c equals 2 pi times r, which we know is 10. And simply, we're going to do 2 times 10, which is 20. And we're going to find that after all of this, the answer is simply 20 pi, or b. Just a few last-minute tips here. If your answer is a fraction, but you don't see that as one of the answer choices, you might want to try reducing that fraction and then maybe it'll match one. There's no penalty for guessing, so if you find yourself spending too much time on any one question, you might want to try guessing a random answer, marking that question, and coming back to it later if you have more time.